Chapter 1. Shirtless, sweating heavily, Aikata stumbles through the dark forest, throat raw from his labored breathing. The lack of light and unfamiliar terrain make for hard going, and the burden he carries does little to help. Looking to the frail young woman unconscious in his arms, he again wonders how she came to be this way. Wearing his t-shirt as to hide her naked frame, the anonymous girl is nearly a head shorter than he, shockingly slender and modestly endowed. As frail and small as she is, the young woman would be less of an encumbrance if not for the peculiar accessories she wears. Interlocking plates of angled steel form oversized knee-high boots what weigh down her feet and legs, while intricately crafted gauntlets cover her hands to her elbows, adding their own weight to Aikata's struggle. Stranger still, the ponderous helmet she wears, hiding her head, its solid faceplate completely blocks her eyes and nose, wrapping under her chin and jawline to hold her mouth shut, leaving her neck exposed. For a moment stopping to rest against the trunk of a broad tree, Aikata mumbles, "Wandering lost in the woods in the middle of the night, and I find a random girl passed out on the ground." Then, panting heavily, he looks about the darkness, sarcastically adding, this kind of thing happens to me all the time, like, at least once a week. And, setting his feet to moving, once again, Aikata continues to dryly ponder his predicament, saying, "And sure, it's not at all weird that she's naked where it counts, and wearing some sort of medieval torture armor. Ugh, this has to be a dream." Moving along with the rhythm of his breathing, Aikata shambles through the leafy undergrowth another short spell, going mostly blind. "Most people don't remember their dreams," rambles he, adjusting his hold upon the girl in his arms. "Apparently, they forget them within a few minutes of waking. I never thought that sounded right, because I remember most of my dreams. Like, I even remember dreams I had when I was a kid. Full detail, full color, smells and everything." Falling silent then, Aikata huffs and puffs as he presses on in the darkness, mindful that he not trip and fall as he staggers through the underbrush. Of a time, he adds, "That's why I'm pretty sure this is a dream. I remember going to sleep in my own bed, and then suddenly I'm laying in a forest. Then I find an unconscious, naked girl who's wearing armor. That kind of perverted nonsense only happens in dreams. Or in anime." Then, pausing his goings a moment, Aikata looks about the night-dark forest, taking in his surroundings as best he can. Within random pools of clear moonlight, he notes the tall fir trees and broad-leafed maples, and spies the conspicuously drooping tips of true cedars standing against the night sky, while the forest floor about him seems a tangle of sword fern and salal, and thorny vines which could only be blackberry bushes. With a heavy sigh, Aikata comments, "Well, I recognize the trees at least. They're the right kinds for where I live, except I don't really see any arbutus or monkey puzzle trees. And the moon doesn't appear to have a face or rabbit, so that sucks. I can't find the Big Dipper at all. Now that I mention it, I don't recognize a single constellation in the sky. That really bright star there could be Polaris, or maybe Venus." Awkwardly adjusting his hold upon the unconscious girl in his arms, Aikata trudges onwards, selecting his route based on ease of access and sheer guesswork. Mind racing, he continues his soliloquy, saying, "I guess it's possible I was drugged and kidnapped and left for dead in the woods of some distant country. But if that were the case, there'd be, a reason of some sort." Then, wiping the sweat from his brow with a shoulder, he adds, "Let's be honest here, unconscious girl. It's not like I'd be worth ransoming." And, heaving a heavy sigh, he continues to tromp his way through the undergrowth, saying, "Don't worry, though. I'll find us help. There's gotta be someone around here, a house, a road, something." Trying to ignore the pain in his back and the burning ache in his arms, Aikata focuses on keeping his footing in the uncertain terrain. Breathing heavily, he mutters, "Knowing my luck, I'm probably just bringing you further out in the middle of nowhere, and we'll both end up as bear food. Or tiger food, maybe, or anaconda food. Pushing his way through the moon-dappled undergrowth a spell, Aikata then chuckles bitterly and says, "Or worse, I might be bringing you back to the people who put that creepy torture helmet on you." Aware of at least a dozen forms of hurt throughout his body, Aikata grits his teeth against the pain as sweat begins to drip from his nose. Desperate and determined to press on, he offhandedly says, "Hey, you want to hear a story, unconscious girl?" Panting a moment, taking her silence as a yes, he then says, "I had this dream once where I was at Camp Crystal Lake. You know, that summer camp in the Friday the 13th movies? Anyway, I dreamt I was in one of the cabins playing video games on a really old Apple computer. It was dark outside and raining heavily. And as I'm playing games, I can see the reflection of the window behind me on the computer screen. And outside the window, upon a flash of blue-white lightning, I see Jason Voorhees standing in the rain, watching me through the window, looking to kill me. But for some reason, I wasn't in the mood for a scary dream that night. I don't know, I was having fun playing games on the computer, I guess. So I moved the point of view of the dream into Jason, and suddenly I was Jason, standing at the window in the rain, watching quote-unquote me play on the computer inside the cabin. And I mean, I could feel the rain on my shoulders, I could feel the machete in my hand, could hear my breath muffled by the goalie mask I wore, everything. Anyway, so in the role of Jason, I simply walked away from the window, back into the darkness of the forest, leaving the quote-unquote me in the cabin to survive the night. Then, I somehow jumped the point of view of the dream back into my own body, and I was suddenly sitting there playing at the computer as I had been. And then I woke. His next footstep finding no purchase, next word turning to a drawn-out cry, Aikata falls forward in the darkness. Reflexively twisting in the air to cradle the young woman in his arms, he braces her head and neck as he falls. Landing hard upon his shoulders and back, his chin ricochets off the girl's steel helmet, and the air rushes from his lungs. For a moment laying supine, cradling the unconscious girl tight against his chest, Aikata grinds his heels into the ground, desperately croaking and gulping for air. Alarm bells of pain ringing loudly in his mind, he squeezes his eyes shut and rolls over, carefully depositing the frail young woman onto the stony ground next to him. Focusing upon his breathing, slowly returning it to a more even canter, he then struggles to push himself up to his knees, wincing for the pain in his shoulder. With effort, Aikata moves the unconscious girl to lay within a nearby puddle of moonlight, proceeding to check her for injury, and upon feeling the beat of her heart and the rise and fall of her breath, he then turns his attention to the strange contraption about her head. Seeing how the form-fitting helmet conceals her head completely, without holes or slits through which she can see, hear, or speak, he mumbles, "How do you even breathe in this thing? What kind of sick pervert would do this to you?" With one hand supporting her slender neck, Aikata feels around the helmet with the other, searching for some form of latch or lock what holds it closed. "Well, if this is a dream," mumbles he, attention on his fingertips, "I guess I'm the sick pervert who's making you wear it. If that's the case, young lady, I'm terribly sorry. I don't usually..." Upon a strange click, the metal helmet somehow loosens, opening at the jawline as though hinged from within. What the hell did I do? Well, whatever, let's just get this damn thing off. Gently lifting the heavy helmet from her head, Aikata sets it aside, then turns his worry to the unconscious girl herself. Pushing long strands of azure hair from her eyes and wiping the sweat from her cheeks and brow, he strains to discern her features in the bright moonlight. A galaxy of tiny freckles adorns her pale, seemingly ageless face, while her high cheekbones, slender jawline, and chin grant her a sylph-like appearance. With a small mouth shaped as an archer's bow beneath a button nose, her face is placid and serene as she breathes the deep, regular breaths of sleep. "There," Aikata whispers, lightly caressing her cheek. "Maybe the fresh air will help." Then, looking about the dark forest around them, he discerns they are within a long and narrow clearing between the tall trees near the embankment from which he fell. Wincing against the various aches and pains in his body, he looks this way and that, up and down the clearing, trying to read the terrain amongst the shadows. I think this is a road of some kind, he muses, shivering in the cool night air. Then, turning his attention back to the unconscious girl, Aikata lightly pats her cheeks, saying, Hey, blue-haired girl, can you hear me? Come on now, wakey wakey. With a soft moan, she weakly shies away from his hand. Yeah, that's it, Aikata says, quietly. Come on, open your eyes for me. I won't hurt you, I swear. Trying to lift her head on her own, the blue-haired girl's eyes flutter and open a moment before closing once more. With a sigh, Aikata says, come on. Hey, blue-haired girl, I need you to wake up. Once more rousing, she slowly opens her eyes. Face expressionless, she locks her gaze onto his. That's it, says Aikata, forcing a smile. There you are. Hi. Look, I'm trying to get you somewhere safe, okay? But I don't know which way to go. Can you... As she begins to slide back into unconsciousness, Aikata then pinches her cheek sharply, saying, No, stay with me. Come on, I just need to know which way to go. I don't know if you can hear me or understand me, but if you could just point me in the right direction, I'll get you to safety. Eyes crossing, as she tries to focus upon his face, the blue-haired girl lifts her heavily armored hand. Voice barely a whisper, she says, Kita. Kita, frowns he. Is that what you said? What the hell does that mean? The girl's whispers grow faint then, as she drifts back into unconsciousness once again. Kita, mumbles Aikata, racking his brain for meaning. Is that her name? A town or something? Wait, Kita is the Japanese word for north, isn't it? Then, looking up through the treetops at the night sky, Aikata curses under his breath and mutters, Great. Even if she is saying north, I have no idea how to find it. Well, I guess a road has got to have something at either end, right? I just hope it's not too... The unmistakable sound of a sword being drawn from its scabbard rings on the still air, alarmingly close to where he sits, and slowly Aikata turns his head. There beside him, gleaming in a slant of moonlight, a long, single-edged blade points his way, its wielder hidden in the shadows beyond. Eyes wide, Aikata watches as the tip of that weapon approaches to within an arm's length of his face, and despite his rising panic, his hands surreptitiously search the ground about him for something with which he might defend himself. With a sudden grin, he holds up a dry tree branch, barely a foot long. I'm not afraid to use this, declares he, trying not to laugh. So, if you want to hurt this girl, you're going to have to go through... Pain blooms in Aikata's head. He never even sees what hit him. A high-pitched whine floods his hearing, and pinpoints of scurrying light cloud his vision, before he slumps forward, landing with his head upon the blue-haired girl's stomach, quietly joining her in unconsciousness.